Hello, I'm Keela. I'm co-founder of the Environment Agency's Women's Network. I'm co-founder of the Cross-Government Women's Network. I also write the guide to setting up a network in the civil service. So I think I'm a little bit biased, but I really like networks. I'm just in awe at what networks can achieve. So I'm going to be talking to you today about setting up a network. And I would say, if you're thinking about setting up a network, then just do it, just do it. That's the approach that we had when we first started the Women's Network in the Environment Agency. It's scary, but I would recommend that you give it a go. Of course, let's go back to why networks exist. Networks exist because there's an issue and a reason to do so. You don't have a network for no reason. So I would suggest that you need to focus on three things. The first being, what's the issue? What's the barriers that you're actually trying to address here? So I'd suggest setting up a survey. In the Environment Agency, we actually ran the same survey every year because that way we could benchmark our scores every single year. And also society changes. It's a really good way, a survey, to evaluate what you've done that year, but also to ask, okay, so what are the barriers now? So I would suggest the first thing you need to do is get to know what the issues and the barriers are. So set up a survey. And after that survey, build an action plan. I have seen incredibly long action plans. An action plan should be 2 sides of A4 tops. If it can go on one side of A4, I'm even happier. I've seen so many networks have too many actions. They're just biting off too much, really. So 2 sides of A4 maximum for an action plan. And then, go out for volunteers to come and work with you. I'd really suggest that an action plan is built by task and finish groups. By that, I mean, it's a few people who are really interested in that topic in particular. They form a group, they actually action it, and then they close and they move on. I see a lot of networks flounder just because people feel like it's a job for life and they can't actually ever say no, that I can't do this because my day job is busy. So form task and finish groups. They're really short groups that will disband after the action is done. And with your action plan, focus it. I always stress that an action plan is for a year only, never go over a year. But in your action plan, focus it on 3 things: short-term goals, medium-term goals, and long-term goals. Short-term is something that the network, after it's established, can achieve in 2 months' time. As a network, you need traction. So something we did in the Environment Agency's Women's Network was set up a mentoring program within 2 months of starting up, and it gives you that momentum to keep going. When you set up a network, it's exciting. Everything's exciting. You're meeting so many new people. You're really discovering what's the issues that you're trying to address. It's keeping momentum going afterwards. That's the hardest thing. I've got more ideas on that. The second thing I'd ask you to think about is communicate. You need to have a comms plan right from the beginning of thinking about setting up a network. And I really would stress, networks aren't just about events. It's so easy to get into the trap of just doing events after events after events. Events always have their purpose. They really will, because if events are all about building a sense of community, there will always be a place for that in networks. However, events are incredibly resource intensive. So just really think about, actually, should we have a little bit, a few sparse events like throughout the year, rather than focus all of your effort on events. Maybe focus on those key issues that you're trying to address and the initiatives that you're trying to set up. Think about other ways of communicating as well. Think about blogs and articles. Focus groups are an incredibly important way of actually engaging people. And then I would say just focus on what you've successfully achieved as well. So communicate is key. And the last thing I would say is, if you're thinking about setting up a network, is value your volunteers. Networks are run and set up by volunteers. So you really need to recognize that work. So a few ideas of what I've done over the years. One thing I really like to do is ask if the permanent secretary or chief exec could maybe write a letter to those individuals in the network who've done amazingly well on the Task and Finish group. I really value those letters personally. I've kept the letters that I've received. And it's just a really simple way of just saying a thank you. There's other ways as well. You could write to their line manager, or in the past I've suggested people for the Royal Garden Party and even honours as well. Value your volunteers. These are people who go over and above their job every single day. So really, really think about how you're going to value those volunteers. So those are my 3 things to setting up a network. The first thing I would say is just do it. It's absolutely phenomenal. I absolutely love networks. And if there's an issue to address, and you've got the evidence that there is an issue to address, then set one up. So first of all, number 1, what's the issue? Evidence-based actions. Number 2, communicate, communicate, communicate. And number 3 is value your volunteers.